Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, this time it's the Paradise Papers, following on fairly quickly from the Panama Papers. And I think anybody that thinks they can invest money around the world and keep it secret from the authorities is living in a delusional land, because frankly, these days, absolutely everything comes out. What's the big takeout from the Paradise Papers? Well, it concerns monies invested in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands predominantly, and some pretty big names. And it turns out that £10 million of the Queen's estate is invested in offshore investments. And this has led to quite a row. Lord Ashcroft, Tory peer, also been mentioned, and indeed Wilbur Ross, who, of course, for Donald Trump in America, is the man in charge of trade. And he's been in London today talking to the CBI, saying that he really does believe that the UK and America must have this great trade deal together. But somebody else was speaking at the CBI today. Yes, the Prime Minister, but also Jeremy Corbyn. He was there today, and he was asked a question by Christopher Hope of the Daily Telegraph after a speech he'd made at the CBI earlier today about people who invest in offshore trusts.
Should the Queen apologise for her private estate making offshore investments as revealed in the Paradise Papers?
Well, anyone that is putting money into tax havens in order to avoid taxation in Britain, and obviously investigations have to take place, should do two things: not just apologise for it, but also recognise what it does to our society.
So anybody investing in these schemes should recognise the damage they're doing, and they should apologise. Now, offshore investment has a pretty murky past, and it was used, particularly in the days of very high taxation. There's no question about it. People weren't just avoiding tax. I think if you go back 40 years, they were actually using these vehicles to evade tax. And that's in a world when it was much easier to do these things. Today, there seems to be a lot of anger about tax, and I think I know the reason why. The reason is that the tax burden in this country on people working, running their own businesses, PAYE, doesn't matter. Anybody working in this country, now we have the highest tax burden that we've had since 1947. 34.4% of our national income goes in tax to the government. So there is a feeling from everyone working that they're paying more and more tax, and that every year it gets tougher, whilst at the same time the view is the very big and the very rich are able to avoid some forms of taxation. And there is some truth in that view. There really is some truth in that view, particularly when it comes to things like inheritance tax. Please don't think that the rich pay inheritance tax. They don't. They have efficient tax planning. They get round it. The people that pay inheritance tax are the people whose parents own a small semi-detached house in South London. They might get killed in a car crash. And one of the next things that happens once the estate's sorted out is they get a whacking great tax bill, because the house is worth considerably more than £650,000, and you're paying 40% tax above that if your parents have both died. So why are we where we are? Well, one of my views on this is that the tax system in this country is so complex that virtually everybody has to use an accountant or a financial advisor. For example, as an MEP, I pay Brussels rates of taxation. I don't pay any national insurance. So when I get the money every month, I have to get an accountant to calculate, to make me legal, what of that I need to pay to the government to keep up with my national insurance. I wouldn't have a hope in hell of working out that calculation. And for people with multiple incomes, they can't survive without tax accountants and financial advisors. That, of course, is very expensive. And what, in turn, these people seek to do is to show the client they're getting good value for money by finding ways in which they can pay less tax, especially to avoid inheritance tax for people's children and grandchildren if they qualify. And I, for my own money, I don't believe for one moment that the Queen made an active decision with this investment to put her money there. It was done on her behalf. But I suppose Corbyn Being the old Republican that he is, the man who wouldn't sing the national anthem when I sat 2 rows behind him in St Paul's Cathedral a couple of years ago, wouldn't bow his head properly, all the rest of it, the old Republican couldn't resist having a bit of a dig. But it is a wider question than just the Queen. Is Corbyn right to demand apologies from people who seek offshore tax investments? And if you think it's totally immoral for people to invest money in offshore schemes, then call me on 0345 6060 973. If you think, look, it's legal, and actually, if I was in that position, I'd do the same thing, text to 84850, or maybe you think, frankly, there's too much legislation, there are too many loopholes, and that's why so many people are doing this and using these vehicles, then you can tweet on @LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC, and of course you can watch me live on Facebook and comment there too. And Melvin has called from Ladbroke Grove with a view on this. Melvin, hello.
Hi, Nigel. I have voted Labour all of my adult life.
Yep.
But I don't agree with Jeremy Corbyn. The way I see it is, quite simply, people are angry about the taxation because people who are working class have to pay their taxes. They've got no way around it.
Yep.
And for people that earn considerably more money than those groups, they find ways around it. So not only are they making more money, they're also paying less tax, which seems ludicrous.
Yes, I mean, that's right, Melvin. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to individuals, does it? Because, you could be running a local business in Ladbroke Grove and having to pay your corporation tax, and yet the mega giants from America, who are here on the high street in this country, are paying an absolute pittance of UK tax. So this goes on not just as an individual level, it happens at a corporate level. And I agree with you, Melvin. I think people are angry about this.
Absolutely. And the thing I would add to that is, jumping on people who have actually taken advantage of these loopholes, I think is misguided. It's a bit like, it's a game, effectively. Taxation is a game. And the players that have taken advantage of it, we shouldn't be penalising them. What we should be doing is looking at the people who make the rules and saying, you've got to improve your rules. I mean, it's like football with people who dive. You've got to sharpen up the rules, and that's what the problem is, and that's what we really need to focus on and get clear cut. And as you've said, it's far too complicated. I think we should have a simpler form of taxation and make the rules a lot simpler and a lot less easy to jump through loopholes.
I agree with that, Melvin. It is too complicated. On Twitter, I'm asked, you wouldn't publish your tax returns during the EU referendum, Nigel, would you? No, I wouldn't. I think some things deserve to be private. I think, frankly, we're getting to the point with all of this where you're actually going to put off anybody from ever getting involved in politics or public life at all. Seems the government is paying the Queen too much if she can afford to invest 10 million in offshore funds, says Leslie on Twitter. Tiss is calling me from Leicester. Tiss, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So is it immoral? Is it wrong? I mean, by the way, Tiss, there are lots of other overseas investments that are genuine investments. You might want to invest money in a company in Peru or America or whatever it may be. But if we talk specifically about tax efficiency or tax avoidance, I guess would be, the legal term, is it wrong for people, if the law allows them to do this, to carry on with these schemes?
Well, Nigel, you put your finger right on the issue. There are two different ways of arranging your taxes. You can choose to evade taxes,
yes,
which is illegal,
yes,
or you can choose to avoid them. And as Melvin was saying earlier on, if you choose to avoid paying tax, I think every individual has a duty to himself to arrange his tax affairs in a way that minimizes in absolute terms, the amount of tax he has to pay. I think if you're not breaking the law, then that's perfectly fine. I agree with you that there are perfectly legal overseas investments, but if the law permits you to minimize how much tax you pay, why shouldn't you do it? The analogy I think of is, if you choose to avoid paying taxes if you can legally, you choose to pay 100 grand for a car. But if you choose to pay the taxes as well, you're basically opting to pay 125 grand for the exact same vehicle, which seems absolutely absurd. And Melvin was right, your previous caller, that what we really need to be angry about is the politicians who, when these things come out, they jump on their soapboxes like that. Those the Republican Jeremy Corbyn, jumps on his soapboxes and then says, oh, well, we really need to do something. Well, he's been in Parliament for how many years, and we've never actually seen anything change or close his loophole. That's the real anger. The anger should be those who come out and say, oh, this is so wrong, but then they sit in power and do nothing about it.
No, Tis, thank you very much indeed for that view. And here's a bit of fun. Maybe Jeremy Corbyn or somebody in the Labour Party should have done their own research just a little bit better, because it turns out on the day of the big criticism of people whose names are exposed in the Paradise Papers that the Labour Party rent their London headquarters. It's the 8th floor, the Southside development on Victoria Street. It's estimated they're paying about £1 million a year for the rent of that building. And guess who they're paying it to? They're paying it to a trust based in Jersey, run by Schroeder Property Managers, Jersey Limited. So there we are, Jeremy. Your party, your Labour Party, is directly putting money into the coffers of a Jersey-based property company. Didn't think about that, did you, when you stood up at the CBI earlier today? Jeremy Corbyn causes a stir by implying that the Queen should apologise because part of her estate has been invested in the Cayman Islands, and it's Cayman and Bermuda and investments there that have been put out as part of what's now called the Paradise Papers. And I'm asking you whether you think Corbyn's right and whether people who put money into these schemes should apologise and stop doing so. I think one of the reasons they do it is, of course, they want to avoid tax. They feel taxes here are too high and the law is very complicated. And financial advisors who want to earn their keep and tax accountants who want to get paid the bills need to show their customers they're saving them money in some way. Burkan is my next caller from Sidcup. Good evening, Burkan. What's your view on the Corbyn statement today?
Take away their citizenship. Everyone who does it, just take away their citizenship.
Right,
they have no right to be in this country.
Hang on. So are you suggesting that we take away citizenship from people doing something legal?
Well, this is the problem. If I owed the HMRC money, the HMRC would evict me and my family out of my house just to get their money.
Yes, they would, and they're pretty... Yep. No, I understand that, and they can be quite vicious. Yeah. So,
they can, but the problem with these people is what they're doing is legal. That's the difference. So when someone says to you, oh, yeah, come on, everyone avoids a little bit of tax. Yeah, but when I do it, I get put in prison. I lose my house. What these people...
You wouldn't, Burkan, let's just be... I understand the passion that you're giving me here, but just to be specific, if you were to avoid tax by being efficient in some way, you would not have anything done to you, because tax avoidance, or tax efficiency, call it what you will, is a legal thing to do. It is tax evasion that is illegal, and that's when they would come after you.
Okay, but this is what I'm trying to say. Now, the problem is these rich people spend a lot of money putting their people into politics. They invest a lot of money into politicians. The reason it hasn't been shut down is half the bloody MPs in Westminster are using the same tax avoidance skills that they're using. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous.
I don't know that that's true, Burkan. I'm sure there are some, and particularly there'll be those who come from wealthy families, who've been beneficiaries of trusts, etc., where the families have managed to avoid inheritance tax. Yeah, there are some like that. I wouldn't think it's as many as half. But, Burkan, what you're arguing, I think, for is for a change in the rules.
Not just the change in the rules. You've got to take away their citizenship.
No, Burkan.
Let me finish. Let me make my point. Me and you have always spoken. Let me make my point.
I know that.
You come back to me.
All right, go on.
Okay? Now, you're being so defensive. I don't know whether you're avoiding these taxes.
No, I'm not, Burkan, I'm not being defensive, but I'm arguing very strongly that you cannot punish in any way. I mean, Burkan, when I say we should take away citizenship from returning jihadis, you'd have thought to hear the screams of blue murder, I propose something truly awful. You're saying we should take away citizenship from people who've done something legal.
This is what I'm trying to say. The reason why it is legal is because they've always got their people in power. Now, let me explain before you interrupt me.
You've no idea whether I was going to interrupt you, have you? Go on.
These same people, they make our laws, they decide our politics, and this is why the middle class keep getting robbed every year. The middle class get robbed, the working class, the taxpayer gets robbed because our money was always given to these rich people, whether it's tax breaks, whether it's quantitative easing, whether it's X amount. These people never understand what it's like to live a normal life, to pay your 20%. I pay corporation tax.
Yep.
You know, and why have I got to pay 20% out of my company's corporation?
I've got sympathy. There are American giants doing billions and billions of turnover in the United Kingdom who are not paying corporation tax, or they're paying piddling amounts, frankly, of corporation tax in this country. Burkan, I understand your anger. You're a small business owner. You're paying your way. Lot of big firms aren't. And Burke, and I thank you for the call. And he's right, of course, in many ways. That if he was found to have broken the law on tax, the bailiffs would be there and would potentially take away the family home. And there is the impression that the very rich are able to pay less tax. And through tax efficiency, certainly on things like inheritance tax, generally, yes, they do. Simon is calling from Basingstoke. Simon, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I mean, I can speak with some authority on this because I actually spent some time working in various tax havens, including Cayman, Bermuda, even Vermont, would you believe, and Delaware's another place.
Yeah, I know. They've got different company law in those states, haven't they?
They have, and to be frank, the real point of this is there is no good economic or financial purpose to allow tax havens to exist other than for two reasons. One, to avoid paying taxation, and two, for secrecy. And the fact that someone like Jeremy Corbyn is saying the Queen should apologise, forget the Queen apologising. Shut these down as soon as possible. If you did that, that would make organised crime, the international drug trade, and corruption by politicians that much more difficult. It's probably the single act that you could do that would really make their lives very, very difficult, plus also raise an awful lot more revenue. And if companies like Apple and Google, etc., want to carry on playing this game, then what we should do is we shouldn't tax them as we tax normal companies. We should tax them on their UK turnover.
Well, we should, and of course, actually, Simon, one of the benefits of Brexit, if our government actually gets round to it, is that we'll be able to do that as the UK, because we'll have our own tax sovereignty, which we don't have at the moment as part of the European Economic Area. So I'm very much hoping, as part of Brexit, we get a grip and do that. Your point about secrecy, Simon, I think, 25 years ago, almost certainly, people could open up accounts in these jurisdictions and pretty much be guaranteed secrecy. Would you agree with me? That's now out of the window.
No, it's not, because, I remember the last time I travelled to Cayman, it's the only airport I've ever been through where they do not search your luggage. And I would get off a flight with some very, very suspect gentlemen flying in from the States who were obviously just bringing in cases of money. The secrecy is still there. And it still exists in places like Luxembourg and Dublin as well.
Well, isn't this the irony? You haven't got to go as far as the Cayman Islands or Bermuda. There was a period of time when Luxembourg were cutting all sorts of amazing deals, weren't they?
They were. And to be honest, there's another great example. The Isle of Man has something like 973 personal business jets registered there.
Yep.
Now, either there's an awful lot of pilots living there, or that's just being done to avoid tax. And to be honest, this is a real danger to capitalism. If this isn't resolved, this really strengthens the arguments of the left. And
I think it is to some extent, and Corbyn realises that. But Simon, there are quite legitimate reasons, are there not, why people from this country should want to invest their money overseas?
There are, but why should you allow someone to do that? I would put real restraints on anyone setting up a business in Ireland from the UK just because of the low tax regime in that country.
But we're living in a Simon, surely, look, you're quite right, and I completely understand if people are using this to break the law, to legally, to evade paying their taxes, that I'm with you, and I understand it. If these are vehicles by which bad money, can find good accounts, then I'm with you. It needs to be cleaned up and changed. But there is, surely, in an international, global market, there is an element of competition in terms of where you invest your money, what shares in a company you want to buy, and part of that is regulation, but surely part of that is tax. Do you think tax competition of itself is a bad thing?
No, I don't. But I also think that if you buy something from Amazon, if you actually look at the details, you're not billed to a UK company. The bill that you pay, the payment is actually made to a company in Luxembourg, and that's purely for tax avoidance. And it's not beyond the wit of man. Not beyond the wit of government. Let's be even more extreme to be able to deal with this. You just had the DVLA ad on your program. The DVLA collects something like 99% of vehicle license fees. If HMRC was doing something similar, we wouldn't be running a budget deficit.
I very nearly fell foul of that last week myself. You used to have a tax disc, didn't we, in the window, so I knew when I had to renew it, and I just on the last day remembered to do it, so I was nearly one of their victims. Simon, finally, as somebody with long experience in this industry, is the offshore investment industry cleaner than it was 30 years ago?
No.
No.
To be honest, I no longer work in that industry, but I did spend some time working in anti-money laundering.
Yeah.
And what's going on in the UK, especially in the residential sector, is frightening.
Well, do you know what? I agree with that. I very much agree with that. And isn't that, to a large extent, something that has inflated the price of homes in London to the extent that a lot of young people can never ever buy a house?
That's true, but also a lot of those are actually owned by trusts which are held in offshore tax havens, and we do not know who owns them. Yeah. How can someone who's a Russian tax collector who's earning $30,000 a year afford to buy £2-3 million property in the UK?
Yeah. No, Simon, you've made some very, very strong points. Thank you. Simon, pretty critical of these regimes, but hey, a lot of you also saying, if it's legal to do this, what is the problem? And what about cash-in-hand traders? Who's avoiding tax there, says Chris in York. Well, cash-in-hand traders, Chris, if they don't declare it, are not avoiding tax, they are evading tax. And that is against the law. It's the difference between trying to con the tax authorities and being tax efficient in terms of what you do. And they are two different things. She's the elected head of state, for goodness sake. Can we now park? She never puts a foot wrong, Codswallop. Debbie, do you honestly think the Queen micromanages her investments? And interesting, isn't it, though? These two jurisdictions that we're talking about both still fly the Union Jack. Interesting, that point. Christian says on Facebook, the Queen should not apologise to Corbyn. She should be shown respect. Well, to be fair, Corbyn wasn't asking for a personal apology, but he was asking for the nation to have an apology. Anthony says, Nigel, you support the super rich. Well, no, Anthony, I don't. I want things to be fair. I've already said I want to get our own tax sovereignty back. I want us to start charging corporation tax for the turnover big companies make in this country. And, yeah, I want as many rich people as possible paying as much tax in this country as is possible. And I'm old enough to remember when income tax top rate was 83%, when on unearned income it was 98%, and when money and talented people fled the country. And that, Anthony, is the last thing I want. I want us to be efficient, competitive, have a much simpler tax code, and I would like a lot more tax being paid here by rich people. Absolutely. Jeremy Corbyn says that people who've invested money in offshore schemes should apologise to the nation and recognise the harm they're doing, and that, of course, includes Her Majesty the Queen, who, as a result of the Paradise Papers, we learn, and I'm absolutely certain she learned for the first time, has investments in Cayman. And it's Cayman and Bermuda that this current row is about. So I'm asking you, is Corbyn right to demand this apology, or, given that it's perfectly legal to be tax efficient and to avoid paying tax, is it actually okay? And I've, as ever, a big mixed range of views. Story that is getting bigger and bigger this afternoon concerns the International Development Secretary, Priti Patel, who, over the course of August, on what she described as a family holiday, held a series of meetings with Israeli officials. In fact, she attended 12 meetings. Can't be much of a holiday, can it, with all of these meetings, including meeting the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. And I'm sure there's nothing wrong at all with the International Development Secretary going to Israel and meeting the Prime Minister and everybody else. In many ways, it's a very, very good thing. That country, in many ways, needs all the support it can get. But trouble is, when she was questioned about it yesterday, she said, well, Boris was aware, that I'd been there. But now, she says the Foreign Office was aware of the visit while it was underway, but she was wrong to give the impression that the department and Mr. Johnson knew about it, and she regretted the lack of precision in the wording, and all of it would be okay had it not been for the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu met the Prime Minister last week and talked to the Prime Minister about the International Development Secretary having been in Israel, and Mrs. May didn't know anything about it. So somehow between Priti Patel, the Foreign Office, and Number 10, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and I have to say, it does increasingly feel, this government, like the late days of John Major. Rudderless, all over the shop. It is a bit of a disaster. Back to the vexed issue of overseas investments, and Johnny is calling me from Harrow. Johnny, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
So, should people apologise? Is it morally wrong what they're doing?
Unfortunately, apologies don't pay for schools, hospitals, the police, etc. So, I don't really need politicians to tell me what's moral or not.
Right.
I want politicians to do what they're paid for,
Yep.
which is to put laws in place to ensure that people do pay their fair share of tax. Because if it was down to morality, they'd be paying it already.
Yeah, well, you say that. I mean, nobody, Johnny, surely pays more tax than they have to.
No, exactly. Which is why an apology is no good to me.
I agree with that.
I want Corbyn to put laws in place to make sure that people pay their fair share.
Yeah, Johnny, you've put your finger on it as far as the apology is concerned. What use is an apology? You're absolutely right about that. But what can you do? I mean, you can't put in laws to stop people investing money overseas, can you?
No, well, this is the problem because they're always 2 steps ahead, and so it is very difficult. Let's be honest, it is difficult because British individuals and British companies invest money all over the world, just as individuals and companies from all over the world invest money in Britain. I mean, so there is the investment aspect of this, but equally, Johnny, an awful lot of these accounts that are set up all over the world are used to avoid paying tax in this country, and to do so perfectly legally, and to set things up in trust for people's children and grandchildren, and the really big one, to avoid people having to pay inheritance tax. I do. I understand. I understand. It's very difficult because I don't want to pay more tax than I have to either.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people out there who it just feels awful that people are using public services all the time and they're just not willing to pay for them.
It does feel, Johnny, doesn't it? It does feel, and I guess it's always been the case, whether it's in terms of tax or being able to use the legal system, but that actually those that have got a lot of money have got huge advantages over ordinary people out there working for either for companies or running their own.
If you can afford a financial advisor, then that seems to be. Well, wouldn't it make more sense to? I don't know exactly how. I'm not the smartest person with regard to this, but there's so many people with law degrees in the government.
Yeah.
Surely, if they wanted to do something about this, they could. I'm wondering if that's why Corbyn's asking for an apology rather than not actually trying to put laws in place.
Because he hasn't got the answer, and because his own party rents their offices from a Jersey property trust. I mean, you couldn't invent that, Johnny, could you?
Vested interest. That's what I mean. It almost seems like, they're hoping that this will blow over, which it will. This will blow over just like it always... We talk about this, every once in a while this sort of thing crops up. It'll blow over and we'll carry on the way we're going and nothing will really change. And it's sad, isn't it?
Well, a lot of things are sad, Johnny, but I think your point about the apology is right. Apologies are useless. Thank you very much indeed for that. It says here, Nigel is defending tax avoidance. What a surprise. You disgust me. Right, OK, matey, I wish you'd ring us up. 0345 6060 973. Somebody tell me, please, somebody tell me that tax avoidance is totally wrong and that you as an individual would never avoid paying any tax. In fact, tell me you might like to pay more tax. Please, someone come on air and tell me that, rather than tweeting anonymously. Paul is calling from Brecon in Mid Wales. Paul, good evening.
Good evening. Look, I've been in a position of having to decide whether to do an overseas trust. I actually did open one in the Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, and I closed it down without ever having used it, so it cost me quite a few £1,000s.
Why did you open it, Paul?
Well, I was advised to open it.
How interesting.
I was advised to open it so that whenever we sold shares, the proceeds would go there. And in the end, after a few years, it just cost me a lot of money. We never transferred a penny. But I just pulled out of it. And then we've been offered deals like give us £300,000 or £200,000 and we'll put you into this tax scheme. Mm-hmm. And we've looked at them and turned everyone down. So myself and my associates haven't got a single trust. We pay the full UK whack, as it were. Yeah? Yep. Now, what we feel sad about here is, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about this, is corporation tax, which I think is a terrible tax. Corporation tax, when people make a profit, when a company makes a profit, it's taxed on the profit regardless. So it's stopped in, you can't use that money for an investment. Now, what they should be doing is hitting it as a tax when it leaves the company as a dividend. So why not have a zero corporation tax, which allows the profitable businesses to grow fast and do the right thing, and tax them when it leaves as dividends. But to take away profitable businesses that are growing a big percentage of their profit is ridiculous.
And as you say, ultimately, when the directors get the money out in the form of dividend, they pay the 40% tax anyway, don't they?
That's right. Next point is we have to compete with people like Amazon, only paying maybe 1% corporation tax. We're paying the full whack. That is a terrible situation because we're under a huge handicap. If they've got an extra 20 or 15% on the bottom line, that's more than you make anyway.
Paul, I agree with that 100%. And your previous point about you set something up in the British Virgin Islands because you were advised to do so goes right back to the start of this show tonight, where I said, because of the complexity of our tax system and because of the increasing tax burden again in this country, that many of us need to use accountants, need to use tax advisors, investment advisors, and they have to show us, Paul, that the big bills they're charging us are worth it, and they do it by showing us how we can save money. And Paul, I was in exactly the same position as you. 7 or 8 years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, I was advised that I should set up a trust, not one that I'd ever be a beneficiary of, but I should set up a trust for the benefit of my children. I should base it, in this case, in the Isle of Man, and that I should put money into that when I sold assets or whatever it was as I got older, and that ultimately it would be used as a vehicle where they would manage to avoid paying inheritance tax. And like you, Paul, I set it up. It cost me a few £1,000s. I never used it, and I closed it down. So I'm completely with you. But can I ask you, Paul, one question? Have you put in place tax-efficient measures to avoid those that come after you paying inheritance tax?
Well, let me explain there. If I die with my company shares, because I founded the business, it's a private business.
Yep.
If I die, then those shares pass on inheritance tax-free.
Right.
So my problem is this. If I sell shares, then if I give money away to my children, which I have done, I have given substantial sums away, I have to manage to live for 7 years.
Right, okay. So Paul, what Paul is explaining is that inheritance tax laws, if you give money to your children or those that you wish to inherit from you over a certain amount, but you live for a 7-year period after that money has been gifted, then they don't have to pay inheritance tax. So, Paul, you've rejected the offshore investment schemes, but you're being as tax efficient as you can within the system here, yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't have any effect really at the moment. I've paid eye-watering amounts of tax. I've even told my children, look, if I die in year 6 or year 5, keep me on life support for this.
Brilliant. Paul, great call. Thank you very much indeed. And there's somebody, folks, telling you he's paid a lot of tax in this country. He's rejected the offshore route. But even he is trying to help those that come after him avoid excessive, and I'm going to call them death taxes, because that's the view I take on them. Anybody out there tell me that what Paul has done is wrong? I don't think he's wrong. Now, I've got one or two of you telling me that all forms of tax avoidance are immoral and wrong, and it must be stopped. Shanjan says to me on Facebook, we need to put a close to these schemes, put in legislation to stop all of this from happening in the future. Well, fine, Shanjan, but it's not that easy. And on the broader question, some of you, and there are messages here that I can't read out because they're not polite enough, but you're saying, oh, it's absolutely evil. Farage is supporting tax avoidance. Well, I'll tell you what, try a couple of these. Joey says to me on Twitter, anyone claiming that people shouldn't avoid tax better not do duty-free shopping when they're abroad. Quite right, Joey. Simon makes the point. Surely anyone investing in an ISA is avoiding tax. Both are perfectly legal and withhold tax from the government. But then I get, one here. Tax avoidance is immoral. Schools don't get built. The NHS does not get funded when those rich enough to pay accountants dodge tax. It isn't just about being rich enough to pay accountants. If you've got complex income, and I explain my position as an MEP, where I pay Brussels tax, but I have to comply with the law in this country, sort out not just my tax, but my national insurance as well. I couldn't work that out for the life of me. I have to have an accountant to do it. And there are lots of people out there who are so scared of the aggression that HMRC can now show using bailiffs. Burkhan rang earlier and said, if he was in trouble, they'd hoof him out of his house, and he's absolutely right, they would. There are lots of people out there who are unsure with a tax code in this country that runs to 13,500 pages, and they know that even if you're in breach, not knowing you're in breach, that is not a defence of any kind at all, and many people absolutely need to use tax accountants. Actually, if you think about it, it means whatever tax rate you thought you were paying, you're probably paying another 2 or 3, maybe even 4% to pay for those accountancy fees. And in turn, those accountants, back to you, recommend ways that you can avoid tax to justify their bills. Folks, this is how it's working out there for millions and millions of people. It's one of the reasons I've always argued for greater tax simplification. And I've still yet to have a caller or a texter or a tweeter who is unhappy that they're paying too little tax and would like to pay more. John is calling from Southend-on-Sea. John, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Good evening. Welcome again.
I only wish you were Prime Minister.
Well, I don't know about that, but
that caller that said that you're disgusting for supporting tax avoidance, I would actually go as far as to say they are disgusting for their hatred and envy politics. That's what I call it.
Right. Well, there's a lot of people, John, who, whatever I say, will criticise it, condemn it, label it in all sorts of ways, and no doubt say I'm paid for by the Russians. But hey, that's life. So, John, if people are doing something legal, should they have their passports removed, citizenship revoked?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This whole subject of taxation is just so full of inconsistencies and so many untruths spouted by the left.
Yep.
I mean, one of your callers a second ago was just saying that the rich should pay their fair share and they don't pay for public services. Oh, my God, that's just the biggest untruth and factually incorrect statement of all time.
Isn't it the top 1% of earners paid 25% of all income tax? I think that's the latest figure I saw. It's roughly around that ballpark, I think, John.
100%. That is a scientific, factual fact. So where is the argument here? I mean, it beggars belief.
I think the argument, John, and I tell you what, John, there is an argument here, or there is a sense of frustration here that I think you should recognise, and it is, and I think, the caller we had before the break making the point that you run a small business. Even if you leave the money in the business, they whip out 20% in corporation tax, and you're a small company, whereas the big companies simply aren't paying it because they're generating income here but paying it elsewhere. I think that's a frustration, John, for people. And the other frustration is after all these years of the Osbornes and these people, particularly from middle-high earners, taking away their allowances, taking away their child benefit, there's a feeling that the super rich are able, through knowledge, through law, through clever tax accountants, to get away with paying some things that a lot of hard-working people have to. That's the frustration, John.
Look, the fact is, Nigel, is that this country, I mean, I've read and heard something, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard since Thatcher was in power, there are now over 300 more taxes that have been introduced
yes.
since that time.
Yes, more and more taxes, longer and longer tax code, more complex system, John. It's not easy, is it?
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If that is the case, if the country is taking more in tax receipts than ever before, then how is it our public services are no better than we're taking more? And yet all we hear from Corbyn and the left is we need more and more taxation.
Well, I think because, John, our population's a lot higher, so that's one of the other problems that we've got, that we need a lot more money because there's a lot more people. John, I thank you very much. Tax paying is a legal obligation, not a moral obligation, says Ian on Twitter. If Juncker had been in those papers, you'd have said he was responsible for his financial dealings, but not the Queen, says Debbie. Juncker ran the most effective tax racket we've seen in the Western world, probably ever, when he was the PM of Luxembourg. Go to Luxembourg, see the queues, the petrol, the diesel is about 25 cents a litre cheaper. Cigarettes, they almost give them away in Luxembourg. They're so cheap compared to what they are buying them in London. And the same goes for booze, and the same goes for giant mega corporations who in the 1990s, when Juncker was Prime Minister, were cutting eye-watering deals in terms of what they could do with their corporation tax. The European Union, despite everything it says, allowed Luxembourg to set itself up as a tax haven within the European Union. So I have mentioned this about Mr. Juncker before, and the truth of all of this is it's complex. There are inconsistencies every single place you look. Al is calling me from Balham. Al, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Firstly, I've got your youngest fan sitting right next to me and wants to say a big hello to you.
Right.
My name's Adam.
Adam, hello. Hi, Adam. How old are you?
8.
8. And are you a listener to the show, Adam?
Very much.
Very much. Great lad. Really good to talk to you, Adam. I love that. Al, he sounds fantastic. Very good.
He's on TV, and every time a politician's mentioned, it's Nigel Farage.
Great stuff. Al, tell me what you've stopped me in my tracks a bit here, but tell me what your point was going to be.
I just wanted to say, I mean, the fact is, the whole Queen saga thing, she hasn't actually personally done it. So
no, of course not.
And she doesn't even have to pay taxes if she didn't want to. So I think that's just, as usual, the media have blown it out of proportion. But I think if, like I said, if your taxes are used in the right possible way, the amount of wastage that happens, that's what makes your heart bleed, because you're paying thousands in taxes. And you don't actually see anything in return. The amount of money that's wasted on policing and hospitals and the NHS and so forth. Yet when you get burgled, you phone up the cops, they don't even want to come. Yet they'll gladly go and arrest a 14-year-old for nicking a flake in Sainsbury's, and there'll be 10 of them to do that. So the amount of money that's wasted, and you think this is a rip-off. Why should I have to pay so much in taxes?
Right. So your argument, Al, is that actually many people do evade little bits of tax here and there, maybe a cash-in-hand job or whatever it is, and part of that motivation is the government wastes lots of it.
Yeah. Like cash in hand, all that is criminal. That is wrong.
It's wrong.
I don't blame the people for being tax efficient, for actually sort of going out offshore and keeping their money, like the Queen did. Because obviously, that's just the way it is.
No, it is the way it is, and it's not going to change anytime soon. Al, I thank you very much. Adam, you're a star, Adam. Ring us up at some point in the future. We maybe got to wait till you're 10, I think, before you can ring in and speak on LBC. But I don't know. He didn't do badly, did he? First thing to say, the Queen should apologise for nothing. The tax the Queen pays, she pays voluntarily, Mr. Corbyn. She doesn't need to pay the tax she's paying at all. And for those of you who want to take the high moral ground, it's easy peasy. Go to dmo.gov.uk. It is the United Kingdom Debt Management Office, and under Section 8 of the National Debt Act of 1823, an account is opened that allows public-spirited members to put money into an account to reduce the size of national debt. Those of you out there who feel you're not paying enough tax, it's easy. dmo.gov.uk. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show.